Oh, hello there, my little wanderer. What a surprise! You found my fireplace. Come closer. Have a seat. Don't be scared. I have a story just for you. This happened during a family trip when I was 14 years old. We had planned a weekend getaway to a cabin in the woods, hoping to disconnect and enjoy some quality time in nature together. My family consisted of my parents, my younger sister Lily, who was 10, and me. We had always loved the outdoors, and this cabin seemed like the perfect retreat. It was deep in the forest and far from civilization. We arrived at the cabin in the late afternoon. The setting was idyllic, with towering trees surrounding a picturesque wooden cabin. There was a small creek nearby and a hiking trail that led deeper into the woods. We spent the first few hours exploring the area, setting up our things, and enjoying a meal together. As evening fell, we decided to have a campfire. My dad was telling one of his famous ghost stories when we heard a strange noise coming from the woods. It sounded like footsteps, but when we shone our flashlights in that direction, there was nothing there. We shrugged it off, thinking it was probably an animal. After the campfire, we all retired to the cabin. Lily and I shared a room, while our parents took the other. The cabin was cozy, but the noises outside made it difficult to sleep. Every so often, I would hear the sound of twigs snapping or leaves rustling. At first, I thought it was just my imagination. Then I started taking it as normal sounds of the woods. The next morning, I told my parents about the noises. My dad said we got too carried away by his ghost stories and suggested we go for a hike to take our minds off of these things. We followed the trail near the cabin, enjoying the beauty of the forest. After about an hour of hiking, we stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin. It looked like it had been deserted for years. The windows were broken, and the door hung ajar. Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to take a closer look. As we approached, we noticed strange symbols carved into the wood around the door frame. My dad, always the skeptic, brushed it off as kids messing around. We cautiously stepped inside. The air was thick with a musty smell. The inside was in shambles, with broken furniture and debris scattered everywhere. We were about to leave when Lily found a dusty old book. She picked it up, and as she opened it, a chill ran down my spine. The book was filled with strange drawings and writings in a language that none of us recognized. My mom insisted we leave immediately, and we all agreed. The rest of the day was great. We didn't really keep that in mind as we continued our hike and saw many natural beauties. In the evening, me and Lily took a bath in the creek, and later we set another campfire. There were no ghost stories this time. Mom cooked pasta with tomato sauce and other spices she had brought along. It was so delicious that it became the main topic of the moment for a while. We all ate very happily. That night, back at our cabin, the noises returned. Louder and more persistent. It felt like someone, or something, was watching us. I told my dad, and he tried to comfort us, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He told us we would leave the next morning, cutting our trip short. Around midnight, I heard a loud thud against the side of the cabin, followed by noises that could be stealthy footsteps. My heart pounded as I sat up, straining to listen. Lily woke up too, and I told her to stay quiet. I tiptoed to the window and peeked outside, but all I could see was darkness. I could feel my pulse racing, but I didn't want to scare Lily, so I told her everything was fine. I stayed awake for as long as my body allowed me, paying attention to every little noise. It was almost like I was a sonar, mapping the surroundings. I didn't listen to anything strange anymore, but the long day of physical activity soon took its toll on me, and I couldn't maintain my alertness, falling into a dream I will never forget. In the dream, I was in a place very similar to that old rusty cabin we saw. But there was someone leaning over something in front of a wall. This person seemed really thin and had strange long limbs. The right arm was moving, as if it was writing in a book in front of him. We behave in mysterious ways in dreams. When I was there, living it, I was kinda numb to all the unnatural reality of the situation. It was like I was just curiously looking around. I got closer to the creature, and indeed it was writing a book. I saw the pages for a second, and saw symbols like those of the wicked book we found in the cabin. The person, if I can call it that, suddenly closed the book very aggressively and told me, "Don't read it, or you will be forever damned." I felt as if something held my heart tightly, and I woke up, crying of fear. You know, when the dream seems so real that after waking up you get kinda lost. That was one of those dreams. As we were packing, we noticed something strange. There were footprints around the cabin, but they didn't look like they belonged to any animal I'd ever seen. They were elongated and had too many toes. Me and my father circled the cabin to check for more, and that was when we saw it. On the back of the cabin, the part that was closer to the woods, someone drew one symbol, just like those of the book. I saw Dad freezing and widening his eyes. Lily didn't see the drawing. My mom checked later with Dad, and she was really shocked too. We hurriedly loaded the car and drove away. During a good part of the way, I kept a chilling feeling, but I decided to avoid thinking too much about it. Just like I'll avoid any weird book for the rest of my life. When I sat to write this story, I felt so many of the sensations I had back then. I'm kinda glad I finished. This trip is the reason I believe in supernatural stuff. I had been dating Emily for almost 2 years when she invited me on a summer vacation with her family. It was an exciting prospect, a week away from the hustle and bustle of our daily lives, spent in the coastal city of Charleston, South Carolina. Emily's parents had rented a quaint, historic house right in the heart of the city. The house was charming, with its wrought iron balconies and old-world charm. stark contrast to the suburban environment I was used to. Emmy's family was warm and welcoming, treating me as one of their own. Her parents, John and Mary, were the kind of people who made you feel comfortable instantly. Her younger brother, Jake, was a bit of a prankster, but overall, a good kid. We planned to spend our days exploring the historic sites, enjoying the local cuisine, and relaxing on the beach. Everything seemed perfect. On the first day, we decided to visit the Charleston City Market. It was bustling with activity, vendors selling everything from sweetgrass baskets to local delicacies. As we wandered through the stalls, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I dismissed it as paranoia, chalking it up to the unfamiliar surroundings and the crowd. However, later that evening, as we sat down for dinner at a local seafood restaurant, I saw him for the first time. A man in his late 40s, dressed in a drab gray hoodie and jeans, sitting alone at a table across the room. His gaze seemed fixed on us, or more specifically, on me. I pointed him out to Emily, but she shrugged it off, suggesting he was just a lonely tourist that had found me handsome or something. The next day, we visited the historic Magnolia Plantation and Gardens. As we strolled through the beautiful gardens, I noticed the same man from the restaurant lingering near the entrance. He kept a respectable distance, never getting too close, but always within sight. My unease grew, but I didn't want to ruin the trip by causing unnecessary alarm. By the third day, I couldn't ignore the feeling anymore. Everywhere we went, he was there. At the Battery, the waterfront park, even at the beach, his persistence was unnerving. I mentioned it to John, who advised me to stay vigilant, but not to worry the others. That evening, I noticed him standing across the street from our rental house, partially hidden in the shadows. That night, I couldn't sleep well. That guy kept coming to my mind all the time. I tried not to talk about it over and over again, but at that point, he was the first thing I would look for wherever we went. Then I heard something hitting the window. Something like little stones. I froze for a second. Oddly enough, I felt I knew what it was. Then another stone hit the window. I looked at Emily. She was still deeply asleep. I decided I wouldn't let this guy ruin her family's trip. I quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Emily, and crept downstairs. The house was silent except for the creaking of the old wooden floors. I peered through the curtains and saw him standing under a street lamp, his face obscured by the hood. The anger was boiling inside of me. I stepped outside. The cool night air sent a shiver down my spine. I walked towards him, my heart pounding in my chest. As I approached, he turned and started to walk away, his pace quickening. I broke into a run, determined to catch him and demand answers. "Hey," I shouted. "Why are you following us?" He didn't respond. Instead, he disappeared into a narrow alley. I hesitated for a moment before deciding to follow him. The alley was dark, the only light coming from a flickering bulb overhead. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and I turned around, ready to defend myself. It was Emily's father. "What the hell are you doing out here?" he demanded. I explained about the man and how I had seen him again. John's expression turned serious. "Let's go back to the house," he said. "We need to call the police." We hurried back and called the authorities. They arrived within minutes and took our statements. The officer assured us they would patrol the area, but advised us to stay inside and keep the doors locked. The next morning, there was no sign of the man. The police hadn't found him, but they found out through security footage that the man was a suspect of molesting two teenager boys in a recent past. Emily and her family were understandably shaken, but we tried to continue our vacation, albeit with a heightened sense of caution. As the week drew to a close, the man never reappeared. We left Charleston with mixed feelings, the beautiful memories of the city marred by the shadow of the unknown stalker. To this day, I keep thinking from time to time, what could have happened if Emily's father hadn't seen the whole thing and followed me? I have been practicing boxing for 6 years now, and that gave me confidence that I could handle the situation. But the truth is I wasn't thinking clearly back then. I'm glad Joan have stopped me. Things could have been a lot worse if he didn't.